Hey, Olive, Arlo, and Frank. Grandpa coming to you in the living room in Jack's Beach, and today we're going to get into the penultimate chapter of the book of Luke, where we are going to see Jesus brought before Pontius Pilate, then brought before Herod, then brought before the crowd of people, and crucified and buried. But we know that that was Friday and Sunday's coming. And in the ultimate chapter, the last chapter, we'll see what happens on Sunday. Chapter 23, verse 1 says, "Then the whole group of them," and so we're talking about the folks who went out and arrested Jesus, and if I recall correctly, it's temple guards who were Jews, and there may have been some Roman soldiers with them. Then the whole group of them rose up and brought Jesus before Pilate. They began to accuse him, saying, "We found this man subverting our nation, forbidding us to pay the tribute tax to Caesar, and claiming that he himself is Christ," that's Messiah, the King. Although they say a king. So Pilate asked Jesus, and Pilate was the governor, I believe, I think he was the governor. So Pilate asked Jesus, "Are you the king of the Jews?" And he replied, "You say so." Then Pilate said to the chief priests and the crowds, "I find no basis for an accusation against this man." But they persisted in saying, "He incites the people by teaching throughout all Judea. It started in Galilee and it ended up here." Now, when Pilate heard this, he asked whether the man was a Galilean. Because of what they do, there's something that people do today. You judge shop. You try to get a judge that you think is going to rule in your favor when you want to prosecute somebody. But you have the opposite of that, which is the people who are in command say, he's a Galilean? Oh, that's not under my jurisdiction. I'm going to send him off to Herod. Now, when Pilate heard this, he asked whether the man was a Galilean. When he learned that he was from Herod's jurisdiction, he sent him over to Herod, who also happened to be in Jerusalem at that time. When Herod saw Jesus, he was very glad, for he had long desired to see him, because he had heard about him and was hoping to see him perform some miraculous signs. So he thinks of himself as a king, this Herod guy. He's an Idumean. I think he's a descendant of Esau, so he's a relative, but he's not Jewish. And he sees himself as the king of the Jews. But he wants Jesus to play some parlor tricks for him. He wants him to do some card tricks kind of thing. Do some miraculous signs. Hey, here are a few people, and here I got buckets of water. Why don't you turn them to wine? I heard you could do that, Jesus. So Herod questioned him at considerable length. Jesus gave him no answer. The chief priests and the experts in the law were there, vehemently accusing him. Even Herod with his soldiers treated him with contempt and mocked him. Then, dressing him in elegant clothes, Herod sent him back to Pilate. That very day, Herod and Pilate became friends with each other, for prior to this, they had been enemies. And so, Jesus healed that friendship. Then Pilate called together the chief priests, the rulers, and the people, and said to them, "You brought me this man as one who was misleading the people. When I examined him before you, I did not find this man guilty of anything you accused him of doing. Neither did Herod, for he sent him back to us. Look, he has done nothing deserving death. I will therefore have him flogged and release him." And flog is they take the cat o' nine tails. It's got to be horribly painful, and they hit you with it on the back. But they all shouted out together, "Take this man away. Release Barabbas for us." This was a man who had been thrown into prison for an insurrection started in the city and for murder. And Barabbas means son of the Father, which is what Jesus actually is. He still is son of the Father. Pilate addressed them once again because he wanted to release Jesus. But they kept on shouting, "Crucify, crucify him." A third time he said to them, "Why? What wrong has he done? I have found him guilty of no crime deserving death. I will therefore flog him and release him." But they were insistent, demanding with loud shouts that he be crucified. And their shouts prevailed. So Pilate decided that their demand should be granted. He released the man they asked for, who had been thrown in prison for insurrection and murder. But he handed Jesus over to their will. Sorry, I gotta wet my whistle. As they led him away, they seized Simon of Cyrene, who was coming in from the country. They placed a cross on his back and made him carry it behind Jesus. One thing that they did is they made Cyrus unclean by making him carry that cross. He was just some pilgrim who had come all the way for the holy festival of Passover, one of the 3 mandatory feasts. If you were a Jewish man, you were supposed to be there 3 times a year. Passover was one of them. And sounds like he was getting there kind of late. He arrives in town and they go like, "Oh, well, we're going to ruin your Passover." But I joke, imagine carrying the cross for Jesus. You know, many times he said, "Pick up your cross and follow me." Here was a man who was forced to do that. A great number of the people followed him, among them women who were mourning and wailing for him. And this is one thing, ladies, Olive. The men all ran away. We saw yesterday that Peter denied him 3 times. The women never left him. They were there with him. But Jesus turned to them and said, "Daughters of Jerusalem, do not weep for me, but weep for yourselves and for your children. For this is certain, the days are coming when they will say, 'Blessed are the barren, the wombs that never bore children, and the breasts that never nursed. Then they will begin to say to the mountains, fall on us, and to the hills, cover us. For if such things are done when the wood is green, what will happen when it's dry? 2 other criminals were also led away to be executed with him. So when they came to the place that is called the Skull, they crucified him, and that's Golgotha. They crucified him there along with the criminals, one on his right and one on his left. But Jesus said, Father, forgive them, for they don't know what they're doing. He didn't say that about the criminals. He said that about the people that were nailing him on the cross. Then they threw dice to divide his clothes. The people also stood there watching. But the rulers ridiculed him, saying, he saved others. Let him save himself if he is the Christ. If he is the Christ. Oh, he was saving others. He wasn't saving many of them, but he was saving others, all right. He was saving me. Yeah, he was taking my sins on that cross. Hallelujah. His chosen one, if he's the Christ of God, his chosen one. The soldiers also mocked him, coming up and offering him sour wine and saying, if you are the king of the Jews, save yourself. There was also an inscription over him, this is King of the Jews. And he is. Always was, always will be. One of the criminals who was hanging there railed at him, saying, aren't you the Christ? Save yourself and us. But the other rebuked him, saying, don't you fear God, since you are under the same sentence of condemnation? And we, rightly so, for we are getting what we deserve for what we did. But this man has done nothing wrong. Then he said, Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. And Jesus said to him, I tell you the truth, today you will be with me in paradise. See, some people try to tell you that it's formulaic. You know, you have to say this exact prayer and you have to do these exact things. This man doesn't know anything about theology, never went to church, doesn't know nothing about nothing. But he knows Jesus. And he said, remember me when you're in your kingdom. And Jesus said, I'm taking you there with me, homie. You'll be with me in paradise. I don't know exactly what he means by paradise, but I bet it's good. If that dude's there right now, I bet he's happy. It was now about noon, and darkness came over the whole land until 3 p.m. So that's like a very long solar eclipse. Until 3 p.m. because the sun's light failed. The temple curtain was torn in two. Then Jesus, calling out with a loud voice, said, Father, into your hands I commit my spirit. And after he said this, he breathed his last. Now when the centurion saw what had happened, he praised God and said, certainly this man was innocent. And all the crowds that had assembled for this spectacle, when they saw what had taken place, returned home, beating their breasts. And all those who knew Jesus stood at a distance, and the women who had followed him from Galilee saw these things. Like I said, the boys all said, skedaddle. And the girls all said, we're going to stay with him. Now there was a man named Joseph who was a member of the council, a good and righteous man. He had not consented to their plan and action. So he's one of them. I forget if he's a Pharisee or which, but he was there. He was there, but he didn't want to crucify him. But he was overruled. He was from the Judean town of Arimathea and was looking forward to the kingdom of God. He went to Pilate and asked for the body of Jesus. Then he took it down, wrapped it in a linen cloth, and placed it in a tomb cut out of rock, where no one had yet been buried. It was the last day of preparation, and the Sabbath was beginning. The women who had accompanied Jesus from Galilee followed, and they saw the tomb and how his body was laid in it. Then they returned and prepared aromatic spices and perfumes. On the Sabbath, they rested according to the commandment. So it was sundown, and the Sabbath was starting. And they're going to wait. They're going to come back. And it's kind of like you get to know the ending of the story, but no, you get to know the beginning. Peace out.